It is 6 o'clock. We may have some more people kind of wander in, but we'll go ahead and get started in thankfulness of all of your time here this evening. So my name is Em. I work at the city as the neighborhood development liaison. I do the neighborhood meetings, which are here tonight. I also do the orange signs that tell you of a neighborhood meeting or of a development project, and other kinds of outreach and engagement when it comes to the development review process. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the Hartford Habitat Condo Project. We did have a meeting earlier in April that was regarding the rezoning of the land that this project is planned to be on. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the project itself. So I see some familiar faces who have returned tonight to talk about the project, and I want to welcome you all back. And for those of you who weren't able to make it before, welcome for your first neighborhood meeting on this project. So we'll go ahead and tell you a little bit about why we do neighborhood meetings and why we do them at the point in the development review project that we do them. So you'll notice when you see the plans for this project that it's pretty early on in the process of getting this potentially approved by the city. And the reason that we host the neighborhood meetings so early is because plans are still fluid and we're able to take into account people's concerns and comments at this time, rather than waiting until down the road when things are more established. So, you know, there's a pro and con there. Sometimes we may not have the answer for you all because things are still preliminary, but it also allows us to be a little bit more nimble when it comes to implementing public comment. The reason why we host these neighborhood meetings is really to answer questions that you all have about the project. We're also able to take comments, although I will say if you are really hoping to make a comment, I do have comment cards up here. Please write them down for me. I have limited brain capacity, and if you write them down, then they're in the record. We're also going to show you a little bit about the project. So we'll start with a brief presentation, go over some of the details, maybe answer some of the questions beforehand, and then we'll launch into Q&A, which will be the majority of the evening. I'll talk about who's in the room with us this evening. So I'm here to act as a facilitator. I also did the kind of coordination for this meeting. I do have a co-facilitator here with me tonight, JC. She'll be helping out with the Q&A portion. I'll call her up when we get to that point. We also have the applicant team. That's all of the professional staff who are involved in preparing this project to go through development review. That could be engineers, architects, developers, and a variety of other professionals who work in this field. And they're here to answer your questions. We also have several city staff. They've joined us online. We have staff from our traffic department and our engineering department. So if you have questions about those topics, we may be able to answer those as well. I'll go ahead and launch into our presentation from our planner, Shauna.
Hi, everyone. I'm Shauna Van Zee, and I have a fancy clicker. Thanks for being here tonight. I know, again, it's nice to see a few of you that joined us for the rezoning meeting. So that happened about 1 month ago. And that meeting was for the rezoning, like Em mentioned, of the property specifically. So tonight we're going to be talking about the development application and what's being designed for the property. So I just wanted to cover a little bit of why we're doing this work and kind of what our role is. So the purpose of development review and why we go through this process is to ensure that local governments can review plans and make sure that they align with the needs of the broader community. So that's kind of the big picture of why we're doing this. And we're looking for things like making sure our new community is safe, and that your community is safe, and that things can integrate into one another, and including things like character and quality of neighborhoods. So my job when an application comes in is to review it against our land use code. So a land use code is not an exciting read if you've ever opened it. It's a very long document, but it is what guides the development of land in our community. And so some of you may have heard it's currently going through an update process with council. So if you want more information about that, you can talk with Em and I. But this is something that's been guiding development in our community for many years. And the role of that document is that we have these other guiding plans in our community, things like city plan, which is our comprehensive plan. What do we want the future of our community to be in 20 years? We have things like a housing strategic plan, and that says, what do we want the future of housing to be in our community? So the role of the land use code is to implement those guiding policy documents. So that's kind of the bigger picture. And those are very community intensive processes. Putting those plans together, they often take years and have a lot of community involvement, and that's thinking big picture for the whole community. And so this land use code, one of the pieces of a land use code is zoning. So there's a zoning map for the whole city, and that guides what different zones fit together, create neighborhoods and communities, and what types of land uses or design standards might be appropriate for those specific zone districts. And Em touched on this a little bit, but really the role here tonight is to share information with you all so that you know in advance what this application could look like, and for you to provide helpful feedback for the applicant team on what can make it a better fit for your community. So just a little bit about the site. We're very close. It's just north of here, as you know. It's about 7.5 acres and it's currently undeveloped. And it abuts both Buckingham neighborhood, which I know we have quite a few of you from there tonight, and Colorado Metal and Iron, which if you live in this neighborhood, you know of as well, right? Because of the sound. And also there will be, just so you know, a buffer yard requirement that's needs to be adjacent to that industrial use. So you'll see that on the applicant's proposal tonight. And this is just another view of the property along 3rd Street in Buckingham. So as I mentioned, there is a rezoning for this property that will be happening, or application submittal that will be happening. So the way that that works is there's 2 processes happening somewhat simultaneously. First, the applicant team is applying for rezoning. So they're proposing to rezone this property that I just showed you from industrial, which is what it's currently zoned, to a neighborhood conservation buffer district. And I'll explain a little bit more about that. So the zone district that they are submitting an application to rezone it to is meant to be a transition between residential neighborhoods and more intensive commercial areas or high traffic areas. The maximum height that you would see in a zone district, in this zone district, is 3 stories. And I know that there were some questions about where else you see this in the community. You're often going to see it, it's a primarily residential zone district. You're often going to see it around the edges of our downtown zone district. And again, this is what it's being zoned from, what they're applying to zone it from, and it's also what metal and iron, Colorado Metal and Iron Works is. So what you see in the I zone district is what you would likely anticipate, things like manufacturing, warehousing and distribution, indoor, outdoor storage, and other commercial and industrial operations. So that is the zoning that you see just to the east of this property. And we are currently in the downtown zone district, specifically the innovation subdistrict. So this zone district is intended for areas that were formerly industrial and are promoting a lot of more employment and innovation. So again, you often see this specific innovation subdistrict along the edges of the downtown zone district. And the goal is to reflect an industrial character and the river landscape in this zone district that this property's in. And then the Buckingham neighborhood, of course, that is zoned low density residential. And so that's really going to be primarily single family that you see in RL across our community. And that's what the Buckingham neighborhood is as well. So that's a little bit about just the zoning for that property and what you're going to see in the surrounding area. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about process. So as I mentioned before, there's 2 processes happening concurrently, and the rezone has a different decision maker than the proposal that you're going to hear about tonight. So you will be notified about both of them, just so you know. But I'm going to walk through this complicated diagram and try and make it as easy to understand as possible. So the applicant team submitted what we call preliminary design review to the city. If you'd like to see that file, we can share that with you. It's available online. And the purpose of that meeting is for them to bring a conceptual idea to the city and get preliminary comments from all the different departments about what they would need to anticipate, how they would handle things like stormwater, electric, site design, connectivity, that sort of thing. So that's not a formal application. They can submit that at any time. And so we've already had that preliminary design review meeting, and they'll be sharing tonight the site plan from that meeting as well. And as I mentioned, there was a neighborhood meeting for the rezone specifically about a month ago, so that already occurred. And they have submitted a formal application for that rezoning process, so that has been initiated. Right now, we're having, as you can see, a neighborhood meeting. This is an optional one for the applicant. It's not required by code, because this would be a type 1 or an administrative hearing. But when you will get notice of that hearing, it's a hearing officer that makes that decision, and it's a public meeting that you'll all be invited to. So again, for the rezoning, that hearing and that decision will need to happen before anything that's being shared tonight could go to a hearing. So this is all dependent, and the applicant team is entirely aware of this. They're moving forward at their own risk with anything that they do in terms of an application for what we call a project development plan. So as I mentioned, that rezoning neighborhood meeting happened, and they've submitted an application, and they're here tonight to share that the design for their project. So when they submit a formal application to the city for what they're talking about with you tonight, we go through rounds of review with them. We typically see about 3 rounds of review, something like that. So they submit a proposal, all of the city departments review it against the land use code, and we give them comments back and they make edits, and that process continues until they're ready for hearing. And again, anything that we do in here cannot move forward to a public hearing until that rezoning decision is made by city council. So city council is ultimately the decision maker for the rezoning application. There will be a hearing prior to that with the Planning and Zoning Commission, because they make a recommendation. So you'll get a notice about first the hearing for the Planning and Zoning Commission to make a recommendation to city council, then you'll get an invite to that as well. And then if what they propose for the rezoning is approved by city council, then they can move forward with the hearing for the development. Clear as mud. I know it's very confusing. I'm happy to provide any clarification if there's any questions, but in summary, there are 2 separate processes. Their timelines will overlap, but the timeline for this project cannot move to a hearing until there's a decision by city council on the zoning. Hopefully that's clear. And then if they get approval for this project from the hearing officer, there's a 10-day decision window between the hearing and when the hearing officer submits their decision. And then there's an appeal period begins, and then there's 2 weeks until that period closes. So after all of those steps, if there has not been an appeal and they've been approved, then they can move on to their final plans and building permits and that sort of thing. Exciting stuff. I'm here all night. I'm happy to answer any questions you have about process or applications. So I will turn it back over to M.
Thanks, Shauna.
Yeah.
And I'm hearing some trouble from folks getting on the Zoom, so I'm gonna try to troubleshoot that in the background. So if you see me on my phone, that's what I'm doing. But we'll go ahead and continue with our presentation. We'll hear next from the applicant. There we go.
All set?
Should be good.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm John Beggs with Russell Mills Studios, so we're the land planners for the project. We are working with Hartford Homes and Habitat. And our group under here is, there's also a civil engineer involved as well, Northern Engineering. So the entire group here, the Odell family, did the land donation. Interior unit finishing, affordable housing units, that's gonna be done by Habitat for Humanity. And then the infrastructure builder and developer is Hartford Homes. Again, we're the land planners under here, Russell Mills Studios, and then there's a civil engineer involved as well. The individuals to my right here, Landon Hoover is with Hartford Homes, David Thorpe with Hartford Homes, and Kristen Candela is with Habitat for Humanity. So I'm going to hand it over to Kristen at this point.
Okay. So for some of you who were here last time, this might be a little redundant, but share it anyway. There are always questions about how Habitat for Humanity works, and so I want to make sure you have all the scoop. We work with volunteers. Maybe you have seen Jimmy Carter lift a hammer before. We work with many volunteers who donate their time to lift a hammer to help us build, and that's a really key part of our model. We work with many donors. You can't see behind the image there, but we have, the kids that do the lemonade stand every year for Habitat, and the $5 monthly donors, all the way up to land donors and people doing site development at no cost. So it's a huge range and a big community effort to make it possible. We are a very grassroots organization that we grow where we're planted. Partner families. There are no bigger partner than our partner families. Our home buyers are really the most remarkable people. They put in hundreds of hours of sweat equity building their home. They do many home buyer education courses to be really prepared for home ownership. They're way more prepared than I ever was. Our partner families also buy their home. That's a common misconception that Habitat for Humanity gives away houses. We do not, but we are the builder and the mortgage lender that helps make it possible for someone who's earning 45 to 80% of area median income to buy their home. That AMI doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So if you want to hear it in real numbers, for like a single parent mom and her kid, they would be earning from about 36,000 to about 66,000. That's a two-member family. So this might be a teacher, or this might be someone like Natasha, who's up here on the right. This is the real deal for our partner families. What we've been hearing for years and years is what Natasha told us, which is that she had been working in the same stable employment for 8 years. And that during that time, she had moved 14 times. So she was chasing affordability in our community. And as someone who grew up here as a local person, I think it's changed the character of our community. And so I think it's important to know who our partner families are. Our top professions for Habitat homeowners are teachers. They're people doing healthcare. They're retail and service workers. They're policemen and firefighters. They're public servants. They're getting pushed out. So that's who our families are. And then we always need people to be engaged in our work, as advocates, to talk about why affordability matters, why it's about the character and fabric of our community. So that's Habitat. We do believe with Hartford in creating more opportunities for access to adequate housing in Fort Collins. Fort Collins is a very great place to live. I think we all agree on that. I think we agree that home matters. Probably quite a lot that we agree on. I wanted to show you the AMI spectrum because I think it's important. So if you see here, Habitat is in this range. This is again a family of 2. So we are from like 60 to 45 to 80% AMI. So that's earning up to 69,000 for again a family of 2. So a single parent and a child. And then Hartford with missing middle is earning up to 105,000. So that's going up to 120% of area median income. So why does that matter? Because people are still being pushed out that are earning up to 120% AMI. Right, and the way I think of it, because I know the numbers, we're serving one teacher. The Hartford units would actually be the right income range for 2 teachers. Okay, let's see here. So it's just not affordable housing that's missing. It is the missing middle options for people in just different ages of life. You know, I think about my mom. If you want to downsize, where do you buy? Think about my kids. I don't want them to live in my basement forever, right? People need options. So this is a stepping stone into homeownership, which I think is incredibly important because people need a chance to put down roots and build equity. So here's the name of the neighborhood, Tapestry, Fort Collins. What we wanted to represent, this is really hot off the press, but what is probably most important to you is that you're going to want to follow the project, I would imagine. And so you won't see it saying Hartford Habitat Condo Project anymore. It will say Tapestry, Fort Collins. We liked the idea that there was this vibrancy of the fabric of the individuals that make up our community. Wanted to honor the agricultural roots of this neighborhood and this community. So the A is representing the threads all coming together. So 20% of the homes will be Habitat homes, so the affordable piece. And then Hartford homes would be, again, those missing middle homes. Okay. So I really have what I think is really a privilege to tell you about the donations that are happening here. So the Odell family and Odell Breen, but the Odell family had worked with Habitat for about a decade, and we got to know each other really well over time. They volunteered, they sweat on our site, they built houses, they encouraged other breweries to do this in other communities. And as we got to know the Odell family, there was some lamenting on my part that lots just keep getting more and more expensive. Habitat's not going to be able to keep building here. And so eventually they said they had an idea, the Odell family, and we saw the land. Landon Hoover was a board member of Habitat for Humanity and still is. And when we looked at the project, we realized, wow, this is a big piece of land. The raw land is a portion of the cost, about 2%, but a developed piece of land, like a build-ready lot that Habitat could go stick a house on, is another 17% of a project cost. Habitat, as a nonprofit organization, can't make this kind of an investment in infrastructure. And so having a local builder who's a local guy on our board who had already been serving with us for years, it seemed very obvious to bring them in to figure out, is this feasible? Could Habitat do this with a partner? And ultimately there was no way we could not do it without Hartford. You want to add anything?
Not there. I may have.
Okay.
Jump in a second.
All right. Now you jump in here.
Sure, perfect.
Great.
There's the transition really. I just wanted to speak a little bit to the process. I think there were a number of questions last time of how we arrived at the product type of condos and how we arrived at kind of the mix between Habitat and Hartford. Again, as Kristen alluded to, there's an incredible donation from the Odell family. And Kristen came back with her team and realized, though, there's still a huge gap in making this possible. And that's when they approached us and invited us in to see how we could approach this to help solve it. And again, the vision being, how do we maximize the amount of affordable housing we can provide to meet a big need in our community and also provide missing middle housing. So the first thing we did is, many of you may know Harmony Cottages, which is Habitat's existing project that they're currently building in, and that's a duplex product. And so we initially looked at this site from a duplex perspective. And actually, even before that, I think we said single family, and I think it quickly got dismissed as just not feasible. And that's when we kind of shifted to duplexes. And what we found from a yield study and looking at this site is that we could build about 60. So then taking the donation that the Odell family had done and the donations that Hartford was putting in, that allowed us to get to about 6 affordable units. And then the other 54 would have to be very high-end duplexes. I think this location could probably serve that high end. It's as you all know, if you live in the neighborhood, it's an incredible location in our town. But they would be pushing outside of that missing middle in order to take the donations and then the real costs offsetting that. So that's what drove us to the next step in evaluating the site for condos. And when we got to the condo mix, doing the same approach of the land being donated and the infrastructure being donated for those, we got to a mix of 30 condos as affordable and 110 of those serving the missing middle. Might jump to the next. Oops, sorry, I have the power to do that. Yeah, I think that's that.
All right. So I'll jump back in here. So I think Shauna already went over a lot of this stuff, but we'll just quickly move through this. So just to orient everybody, I think everybody's familiar where we are in the world. Buckingham's on the north, 3rd Street's on your west, Florida Iron and Metal on the east, and then Odell to the south there. Just some site photos. I think everybody's familiar. Looking towards Odell. You've been out over on the detailings pile, you know, it's quite the view out there, so. And then looking east towards Colorado Iron and Metal, if anybody's a neighbor there, everybody sees this from time to time. I think this project would do a great job of buffering that on top of the buffer that's coming, so. And then along 3rd Street, I think the thing to keep in mind with the detailings is that all of those tailings are going to be taken off site. So the lot that you see there is approximately 11 to 13 feet higher than what it would actually be. So when you see the project on the plan, it's not like we're going to build the project up on a hill and then 3rd Street's going to be down below. Engineering is going to require some finessing of all that stuff, but that's something to keep in mind. So we're going to be taking a lot of that dirt off site. There we go. Shauna went through this as well. So we're going from an I industrial zone to an NCD. I think we talked about that. So this was the preliminary development review plan that I think a lot of you have seen already. It's been out in the open. To orient everybody again, 3rd Street on the west, there's 3 buildings along that frontage. One facing Logan Street, which would be the extension of Logan, and then 4th Street running north and south towards Buckingham. So then there'd be 2 buildings up on the north side on the Buckingham side. And then these 2 buildings would front on that open space. And after going through some iterations with the design team and talking about a few things, we had decided to go to a revised plan, which shifts 4th Street further east. So instead of 4th Street used to run somewhere in here, we're shifting it to the east. There's going to be a buffer yard on the east side, which is going to be buffering the property from Colorado Iron and Metal. Buckingham, we'll do the road network really quick, but Buckingham, we're going to be dedicating some right of way. It's a collector street that has not been fully developed along the property frontage. So that will be developed to the collector standard. It's very similar to what you're seeing west of here. It's not going to, change a whole lot. 3rd Street will be widened. The PDR comments from the city said, we need to do something to mitigate the traffic impacts that are happening on this street. So what we're gonna be doing for the project is widening it by 6 feet. And more or less what that does is insets parking along Third Street. So that we're not creating a one-way condition. I live in a neighborhood that has that, and believe me, it's very frustrating, so. Logan Avenue will extend. And that's gonna be a 63-foot right of way. That is the new local connector standard with the city of Fort Collins. So it accommodates bike lanes and parking and two-way travel. And then Fourth Street running north and south will be the same street standard. It'll be a 63-foot right of way. Then the 20-foot landscape buffer, and then there's gonna be a large open space, approximately about 13,000 square feet of open space on the east side of the project.
Can I ask why on that side?
We'll just hold questions right until the end. I think we're almost done.
Yeah, we're right there.
Yeah, we'll get right
We'll get that.
there.
There we go. So I just wanted to go through parking and access really quick. So we have. As the project sits right now, there's approximately 41 spaces that front the project on the west side and on the north side along Bucky. On street with the project, with the addition of Logan and Fourth Street, we would have 111 on-street parking spaces. We would be allocating 26 of those within code for the project for on-street along Logan and Fourth Street only. So we would be the neighborhood would be a net gain of 44 spaces for the neighborhood for parking. However, anybody wants to use that, of course. So on-site parking for the garages and the multifamily buildings, there's 106 parking spaces within those buildings. Surface parking on our site is 110 spaces. So there's 216 spaces on our site that are parked. And then we'll need an additional 26 that are within code compliance to park along Logan and Fourth. And that the project will be parked at that point.
You want to jump back real quick and we can address that one?
Yep, for sure.
I think
Happy
the
to.
clicker might have died.
Nope, I got it. I think it's just the angle.
You can add there, John.
Mhm.
If you can imagine the site flipped and mirrored, I think the question is probably how do you, could the park be on the Buckingham side? Challenge becomes access, from what we anticipated, and I think what we've heard is driving access. These two drive lanes off of Third Street is definitely not something the neighborhood desires. And so we wanted to focus all access onto Fourth, and then once you get 2 points and of access, it kind of locks from doing that on that side unless we wanted to put access off of Third. So that's the process we went through to get there.
Thanks. Just before we transition into Q&A, I see our hands up. I do have some ground rules that I just want to put up on the screen just for everybody. And I want to also introduce my coworker, Daisy, who's going to help facilitate. We'll spend the rest of the evening doing Q&A, so hopefully we'll have plenty of time for everybody. And yes,
Just, we had a friend come with us, from First Bank, who
Thank you.
is here to, do Spanish translation, if anybody would rather hear that and hear answers in Spanish, so just raise your hand if you would like that.
okay.
He'll be here as well afterwards, thank you, this is Colel, we're going here.
So I have a question about the street parking.
Sorry, let's hold on 1 second. So
I'm
I'll go
sorry.
over. I just said you can go ahead. So was it?
Yes, we didn't go over the rules. So hello, my name is JC. I'm with City of Fort Collins Neighborhood Services. I'm a senior city planner and I also supervise the programs team. I did want to remind folks before we get started today that we are going to raise hands before we ask a question. If you have a follow-up, that's okay, but try to limit that to one question per person per turn so that we can work our way around everybody. We do only have about an hour together for question answers tonight. Again, the team will be available after this. If you have comments, want to email any of that kind of stuff, you're welcome to do so. We want to make sure we get to everybody today. Now,
Okay, so I know you have the street parking Logan and Ford, but there's no buildings actually facing Ford. But there's 3 buildings facing Third, so human behavior is gonna be, I wanna park in front of my building. So people are not gonna park on Ford and walk to their building that's over on Third, or over on Logan, or over on Buckingham. So even though you show that as lots of parking, that's not where they're gonna park first. They'll park there if they have no other choice. But, so that's not really adequate parking. We know that Third Street's gonna fill up first before Logan and Fourth. So that's probably our first issue. There's a project, the cottages, is just down the street, and they have really wide streets right on Duff. And, all those people park right in front of their buildings. It's kind of the same thing. It's like 3 buildings that face Duff. And they all park there, even though there's a huge parking lot right behind. They all park right in front of their door and right across the street. So if we go down Duff, it's completely stacked with cars. And then all the businesses that are further down Duff have now had to put up no parking signs in front of their businesses because it's all leaking into that industrial area. So how are you gonna mitigate that?
Well, I think the biggest thing that the project is gonna be doing is widening Third Street. Right now, we could easily say that they could legally park along Third Street. So the project will carve out an extra 6 feet along Third Street so that they can get parking without blocking.
But what about all the people that live on the other side of Third Street that are gonna have in front of their houses all filled up as well?
Well, I can't speak for what they're gonna be doing in the future, but what we're hoping is that every planned parking space on the east side of the project, that they'll wanna park in their garage or somewhere closer to their garage access, essentially. So there's a big parking lot on the east side.
That is a difference from the cottages. I'm not getting the name right, but the project you referenced is these do have attached garages that
Some of them do,
are loaded from
not all of
there.
them, right?
Correct, there's the 12
How many per
14,
building? Like if there's 20 units per building, how many garages?
12 and 14 for the different building types.
Correct.
So I know you will probably remember from last time, but we are recording, so comments such as those will be recorded. We also have comment forums at the front. Yes.
Oh, I just have a question on the plan on the Third Street expansion, and is he gonna lose 6 feet of his yard, or am I gonna lose 6 feet of mine, or do we split the difference and lose 3 apiece?
No, it's going to the east. There's no. Nobody's losing anything.
And you calculated or counted the number of cars that you can park on Third Street.
Yes, yeah, there's a calculation on the
Can you tell me that?
plan. I can't remember off.
I think
That's 24.
Yes, so the number is 24. So the widening of the street will, fortunately, you guys thought about that, will just allow the 2-way traffic. That up until 2 weeks ago, really, anytime there is any lane, of course, it's 1-way street. But there are 24 spots.
Correct.
So, and I apologize if I didn't understand, when you say about on-street parking are 111, when you say on-street means Third, Logan and Fourth,
Yes, so that's a calculation of all the on-street
so
parking.
25, on Logan, they're gonna fit 13 or 12,
They'll fit 15 on the north side of Logan. They'll hit 15, well, actually, they're gonna fit 19 on the west side of Fourth Street.
so 19, 25, and 16, right, on street.
Right. Yes,
19, 14,
and-
and 20.
yeah, and we, as a project, can only count the stalls that are on street that directly are adjacent to our project for Logan and Fourth Street.
But that is the point, when you say, this is my project, and I end there, that is also in terms of affordability. Your project does not end there. So whoever has a vision, and the vision is such a big, and then the end of the vision. Yes, I am. You need to
I'm
think-
nodding.
That's okay.
I'm nodding.
So you need to go a little bit beyond, because once you are done with your project and you obey whatever the city gave you to obey, you are done. But the reality is different. The everyday reality is different. You're done, you pack your suitcase and you. So I think if you want to do a service, because that's what we are talking about, service to the community, we need to think a little bit more and just partner. So it's not just giving a roof, it's providing an environment that is a longevity, it keeps going forward. We were talking about the possibility of changing and so on. So this plan really looked into the future. But we really need to look more into it. Because I cannot just say, okay, I'm done. I mean, that's what I was supposed to do, and I didn't. So I really invite you to think a bit more about 19, 14, and 25 on the street. It's not gonna solve the problem. The traffic law would be a two-way traffic, a number of slots on the street, that's what it is. In the absorption of that neighbor. Cannot have this, it's too much for them. With all the benefits that this kind of project may bring. It would suffocate the entire area. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yes. What are you gonna do on Third Street for the heavy equipment, like 18 wheeler going to the junkyard and all that? What are you gonna do with that? We're gonna keep on having all those big trucks in here?
No, the plan is, I think Odell and I'm more or less sure that Colorado Iron and Metal is committed to going using Fourth Street exclusively. So taking truck traffic off of Third and putting it on Fourth Street. It's closer to Colorado Iron and Metal, frankly, and Odell's parking lot is right here. And they'll just go up Fourth Street on the Bucking.
Yeah, but when I'm asking, like, if we don't go from here, from Lincoln or Lincoln, if you're gonna go, keep on just going straight to Buckingham to go to the junkyard,
That I'm not,
we're not
Sure.
eliminating anything. Because we had 18 wheeler there with metal, now they're running out of streets, they're heavy equipment.
Yeah, our limitation is to create better access through Fourth is the brewery itself, right? It
Go
was
see,
run through the
Third Street
brewery.
already cracked.
Odell's,
All over.
the brewery, not the family, the brewery's desire in this was to have Fourth Street become their new access for their trucks at least. And that's what we're building to allow that access in the back there. And they will route their trucks down Buckingham to come in from that way versus up Third and back down. As far as other trucks, I mean, yeah, we can't control where they go, and then I think this is on our site, this is the best access we can provide to improve that situation, but we can't really do anything beyond that.
Is there a buffer for Odell overflow parking?
So what I'd say, I don't know the brewery's plans specifically, but we do know in the land donation to us, they have withheld land back for presumably for expanding the parking lot. They previously have submitted plans to the city at a PDR level, so very conceptual level. That helped us locate that access as well for their trucks, and that would provide expansion for their parking lot. So that's this south of Logan. There's doesn't really show it on either of these, but there's a area there.
Go back to the PDR plan, I think that was. May have been the PDR parking lot plan. One more.
so this was the very preliminary plan that Odell came forward with.
I just have one thing to say. I know, somebody brought up, about flipping the design. So what was your reasoning for not putting those three buildings facing Third, maybe facing Fourth instead?
Access. So then we'd be
Access to what?
taking access. So if we go back to the new plan, sorry. I'm bouncing around a lot. So these access points that go on the Fourth Street would now go on the Third Street. So
I
if
still
we-
think that's
we flip-
better. I still think that's better, because everybody wants to park in front of their building.
Mhm.
So if those three main buildings are facing a street that has nothing but, I guess, Odell's access on the other side, then there's nobody there to worry about parking in front of their house or whatever. So that's all kind of like parking that nobody's gonna really care. So if you flipped it and made it more open space on Third Street, you're gonna have, we're gonna deal with less cars, even though those accesses are there going to the parking lot. If people are using them, they're going to the parking lot.
Mhm.
They're not parking in front of our house. So, and if their doors aren't facing Third, they're facing Fourth, they're gonna park on Fourth. And if they have those two sides of Fourth and Logan to park on, then that's where all the cars are gonna stack up, and I think the neighborhood would be more. I don't know, I think it would be less intrusive on the neighborhood.
So what we're hearing is parking is a bigger concern maybe than traffic.
I think cars are just gonna be a big concern, yeah.
So the traffic study is forthcoming still for the project. So we'll get some more answers about access and traffic capacity, especially for moving vehicles. Well, that doesn't answer the parking question, but we will have additional information for that coming in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So hopefully that'll give us a little more guidance. Do you have somebody we haven't heard from this?
Maybe it's not at this point yet, but I'm just curious. Like, I haven't heard whether these are 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, just an idea of how much, additional housing is being provided for the community.
Yeah, each one of these buildings is a 20-unit building. And there are a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. Might have these wrong, but I believe it's 12 2-bedrooms and 4 1s and 4 3s
In each building.
in each building. Yes, that's the 20.
Yes.
The heavy traffic Mr. Carlos was referring to is another example of looking too close to our nose. Fourth Street will just allow all the heavy traffic of the brewery and the water. Now, if you have spent more than 17 minutes on First Street, we probably have seen heavy traffic that's nothing to do with Odell. And so imagine if now the street will be enlarged 6 more feet. You will not be able to control that again, when you are done with your project. But all the heavy trucks, now they can say, oh my gosh, the street is wider. If I was able to pass to the street, said 6 months ago, of course now it's easier for me as well. So that again, it's just looking a bit farther and more at the neighborhood. Instead of just focusing on whatever you may do and you finish the lead. So, of course, the opening of the street will allow better traffic, but who's gonna regulate that? Somebody may say, well, let's get to traffic, but traffic hasn't done anything so far to regulate it. And Carlos and I, we are right there, and this feet between two tracks go there. They're not coming to there, they're going somewhere else. You have no idea. Speculation that maybe widening 6 more feet will allow them to continue, I think is problem.
Yeah, I mean, we get 18 wheelers at least once a day. But we don't know where they're going, maybe to the metal, maybe to Woodward, like, we're not sure. But, we do get large trucks every day, so
Do
this
you,
is just gonna be in addition, like, oh, so now we're just gonna bring a bunch more cars down your street in addition to all the semis that come down your street already.
do you guys, maybe the answer is no, and that's fine, but do you guys see a solution or an idea for Third Street that helps, whether that be for the city or for us to consider?
Well, you are proposing. And so we are looking at your proposal, because if you are not proposing, if I had to propose, my plan would be different than that. But I am not invited to propose, nor I have the finances to propose. And so my ideas, even if expressed, they stay there. So eventually, if we are asked, say, what is your idea? Nobody ever asked, what you guys are living there. What are you experiencing daily? And so that is a different approach. The moment you want to walk into a community, saying I'm bringing a service. I think everybody would be more than happy to work in there because we have the experience of everyday life there. Again, but think about it, you produce something and you leave.
If you were to take this project away, what would be your thoughts on helping the solution for Third Street? Just, I mean, and, you know,
The way it is now is a city that needs to enforce some rules.
Yeah, in enforcement.
right,
Probably.
And we asked many times, and besides the city says, we put this the sign there. Well, there's a sign that was related to the last event, New Belgium, the plastic thing is still there. So the city drops something and forgets about that.
Right.
There is a sign that says, this is a neighborhood, please don't make noise. There's a noise enforcement. We fought for 6 months for noise enforcement. So the rules are there, but we really are a community who, we are in between the proposer and the city.
right.
And we asked for a street bump on Third Street. If you put bump on the street, on Third Street, or put some bump in there, then it'll be 18 feet. That's for sure.
Yeah, Matt, you have a question?
But we gotta fit and they forget about it.
Yeah, we're happy
They
to
gotta go First Street,
have conversation.
what they
created
do
the
on First Street
process
and
for
Third Street.
Right.
Now, Third Street is the one that's more busy with the metal and everything coming over here, and all the industry that we getting over here. Is First Street is more busy than First Street now.
Yeah, because that has changed, especially with the Vinyl May overpass, I know that's also had neighborhood impacts. The city's happy to follow up with this group about speed bumps and the process for that, if that's something you're interested in exploring, because it seems like that might be part of a solution. Yes.
Well, so one of answer to the possible solutions, is there, you know, there's places like, I feel like on Country Club Road and even that just say you can't drive your truck here, right? Is that a possibility? I don't know how that comes to be or how the city gets to say you can't drive big trucks through this spot. But I feel like that could be a possible solution.
The one on Country Club Road actually came from the neighbors who
Yeah.
said, this is happening to us. We don't want this to happen. If you're gonna put in the Mosaic development or other neighborhood developments, you need to address this first.
Yeah.
So there is precedent for that. There is a process that we've been through for that. So that also feels like a good part of a solution.
And
Can I
don't-
chime in?
Absolutely. For sure.
I apologize for just cutting in, but just to give you a little information on Country Club Road, that's actually a county road. It's not governed by the city of Fort Collins. The city of Fort Collins standards, typically we will not restrict truck traffic unless there's infrastructure that cannot accommodate, such as a bridge that's possibly deficient, can't handle the weight loads, but typically we don't restrict truck traffic just in these types of areas. And I know that's not what you guys want to hear. The unfortunate side is this road does connect from an arterial to a collector in an industrial area that you are going to carry a little bit of truck traffic. Can we mitigate that hopefully through potentially some speed bumps, some other mitigation efforts? You know, those are things we can definitely look at through the city, and we have a program to help look at those things.
Great. Thank you, Paul, so much for that clarification. We appreciate it. Other questions? Oh, Seth,
I
yes.
think I just wanted to ask a question. You mentioned us coming in and then leaving. I think I just wanted to understand that a little bit better. Just because Habitat's been doing it for 30 years, we're not going anywhere. I mean,
So when.
our
we-
hope is to stay in a
Yes.
neighborhood and do
So
other
if you were
projects.
listening to my comment, I was in full support of any house for Habitat, and I also told you last time, I will bring my hamper and help with that. This is 20% of Habitat houses, the rest is not. Now, this project is, in my opinion, is too big for the absorption of this neighborhood, it's too big. Got too many houses, too many people, too many cars. Now, these, of course, do not go against your project. And again, I start my comment telling you, I am in full support, so if those are gonna be. And when we're talking about single houses project, we are not talking about single houses that are 1 acre, 1.5 acre. Because this project could even be proposed as single houses, the same footage that are present in the existing neighborhood. Means you have what, 1/4 acre, even less. But there are single houses that indeed will complement and match the existing building. I don't see any complementation, allow me for my English, or any other match with existing. So it's just too big for the neighborhood. This one, say, if all of those, let's say we build 40 houses for Habitat. I would be happy for that. But as we were talking last time, this goes against the marginal profit of the builder. I want to support you.
We do have more questions, yes.
Yeah, I guess I'm confused a bit by some of the concerns too, because this housing project is going in near downtown Fort Collins. Like, this isn't a small town, this isn't a suburb, this is a city, and we need more housing. I think housing next to our neighborhood would not suffocate. I think it would enhance, strengthen the character of Buckingham currently. I think I mentioned this last time. I was born and raised here. And when my husband and I moved into the neighborhood, it was after a year of living with my mom, in spite of us being at about 100% probably of area median income. Now my brother-in-law lives with us with his partner, and their household income is about $80,000, right? So that would probably be not Habitat, that middle missing. They can't afford a house. They are currently under contract for a cheap house, but my brother-in-law's partner just went into the hospital with appendicitis yesterday, so their deductible is like $12,000. They may have to, not like leave this contract because they don't have the money. So this is really the missing middle. Excuse my voice, I'm nervous talking in front of people, but single family homes are really expensive to build. Multifamily, higher density housing is really what we need in this town to increase the supply adequately, to bring down the cost of rent, to bring down the cost of housing for the people who really make this community vital, like our teachers, the people Kristen mentioned, healthcare workers, service industry workers. My friend here who's a CSU student and can't find a room to rent below $700 a month. I mean, it's really crazy, and we desperately need housing, and even a project like this is not enough to fill that gap. And so I don't know, I'm excited about this. I understand the concerns, but I also feel like this sense of suffocation or too many people. I mean, we live next to downtown Fort Collins. When we moved into the neighborhood, we fully expected more development to come in based on our historical understanding of this area, and the likelihood that more housing would be developed because it's so close to public transit and bike lanes and to business. It's just an ideal spot. And so we knew, like, yes, there will probably be more developments when we move into this place because it's adjacent to a downtown city center, a large city center. So, I mean, I'm sorry, it's not a question.
No, that's really thank you so much for speaking, for casting nerds and for doing public speaking. No, that's really.
And I kind of wanted to add to what she was.
All right, if there are more questions, yeah, there are several other hands that were raised. Yes.
We were talking about psychology and urban planning, and one of my concerns is if you flip it, if you have buildings behind an ocean of parking, it encourages people to drive. Like JCPenney or a big box store, everyone's gonna drive. So I think flipping it's not the right idea. We want to encourage people to walk and bike up and down 3rd Street. And to address this concern about parking right along 3rd Street, I was curious if a possible solution would be parking permits for the other side of the street. We could create a parking permit zone for Buckingham that ended in the middle of 3rd Street, such that only residents on the other side could park on that side of the street. So that was my question.
That's a great question. So there is a residential parking permit program that's run through the city's parking division. We do have several neighborhoods, especially those folks who are right by CSU campus, who have a residential parking permit program. I'll say that fast 4 times. Some people really love it. Some people really hate it. It has decreased errant parking by people who are non-neighbors or non-visitors of neighbors from being on those streets. So that is something to explore. The objections to that are about visitor parking permit passes and the limits on those, but that's one of the trade-offs that we're happy to discuss with the neighborhood for sure. Yes.
Yeah, I'd just like to second the notion of having all the main building frontages along 3rd Street. I think it's a really smart move. I think it's gonna have a really nice residential feeling character right across the street from this single family neighborhood. And I can see that the project team has made a really strong effort to conceal all of the parking interior to the site as much as possible. And I would, that's a massive amount of on-site parking. I think it's like what 216 spaces or something. Most folks going to this neighborhood are going to be going to their assigned space. in a garage or in an on-site parking space. So I concur. I think it's a smart move to have the access points off of Fourth Street because that's where, you know, the vast majority of people who are gonna be parking on this site are gonna be entering from, and it will divert what sounds like a very busy amount of traffic on Third Street away from there for all of the new homes. I think it's a really smart site plan. Just want to compliment you guys on that.
I think there might be some confusion that I'm hearing about, like, why isn't it not 40 affordable homes? Why is it 20? And I think maybe if you could explain, like in plain language, why did it come to 20? Why can't it be 100%? I think some people don't understand how development works or how affordable homes get built. And they say, why would we do the middle housing if we can just have 100% affordable? Which I know you guys know it's not possible, but can you explain that a little bit?
Can I say one thing before we answer that? You talk about the numbers and how it works. We are affordable housing, so of course I believe in that. I think it's incredibly important. But I also think it's very painful that there are 2 teachers that can't get into our program and also can't go anywhere else, right? Why, we heard someone last time talk about how teachers are now driving in from Severance. We know in the mountains that teachers are living in cars, right? This is getting worse and worse. So I don't think we need to separate affordable as being good and missing middle as being different or lesser than. And I just want to say that as Habitat because I think it's equally important.
Can I just add on that? I mean, we're developing a community on Mulberry as well. And we've invited Habitat into that community to partner there and build 40 affordable homes as well. It'll be a mix of condos and a townhome product we have. And our vision there that we loved, and again, we want to repeat here, is that mixed income approach where you have, we don't want to segregate a affordable community. We want that mixed income. We want that blending. That's the idea of Tapestry and that vision of things woven together. And so that's a big part of this as well. On the economic side of that, what I think the reality, I mean, and you can speak to this, but right now on a duplex, the Habitat is funding $100,000 gap with donors.
At least.
And
At least.
$100,000 gap, but they're fundraising on every one of those. And so, and that's on lots that were developed and built many years ago. So the ability to, for single family especially, but even duplex, the ability to fundraise like that is just not a sustainable program for Habitat. Even before this site, a big focus of the board for Habitat was moving towards different product types. I think it was a strategic initiative we had of new product types. And those really what that meant was more dense products that allow us to spread the land costs, the infrastructure costs across more units, which ultimately brings down all of the costs. And then in this case, we've taken away the cost from the Habitat units to make them truly affordable and been able to lower the cost on the other units with the density to make those serve the missing middle. Yeah, this site, I mean, could easily support, I mean, you'd see probably not far away, $1 million condos. I don't know if it would support those, but I mean, it'd be 700, 800, 900,000. That certainly could be a use for this site. It wasn't the Odell family or nor our vision for it.
Other questions? Yes.
Yeah, my question was around, like multi-generational, housing or like redlining. So I think one of, I live on 3rd Street and I moved, 4 years ago. And I know that one of my biggest, things that runs through my head is like, how do I get folks back into Buckingham that may have had to leave or not be able to continue that wealth transfer in Buckingham. So I'm just curious if there's any thoughts around special grants to help people that maybe have family in Buckingham be able to buy in Tapestry, or this idea that
Yeah, what are the cultural elements that went into this project that maybe as there's been gentrification in Buckingham that, you know, maybe we've overlooked?
I would love to hear more. I'm sorry, I feel like I've been cut off every time, but I'd love to hear more about the cultural aspect. Because I just feel like there's a huge, like Buckingham was traditionally like a farming community for the beet factory, and that was just like a miss in your presentation completely. So I similar to Tana, I think we're just like, there's this really strong community here, and I guess that's probably why it hasn't been developed to the fact that like Old Town has yet, because there's been this really strong multi-generational families here, that I think like deserve some acknowledgement, and I would love to see like how this plan is incorporating like that really, that historic thing that's been like the fabric to where, like, this is where Fort Collins started, one of like the first communities, and I just want to know like what's being done with that, and I would love to hear if there's opportunities for families who might want to come back here to be able to do that, to continue that history and that tradition that like is so instrumental in Buckingham. And it would also be great to like have some type of like acknowledgement or plaque similar to like the Beat Park, or what is it called, the Beat Park. Having that in this property, that needs to be all over it, because like this, you know, we're essentially like you're building on top of like a detailing thing, that has to be there. And honestly, like whatever these guys want, I think that they should get it. They've been living here for a long time. And like their voices should be like of the utmost concern, and that is what it is, so.
I'd love to tag team
Please.
that with you a little bit. I'm so glad you asked that. I could not agree more that the history of this land and the beet farm workers is really, really important. And some of that was taken into account in the thoughts of the naming, but I don't think that's the most important part. I think for anybody who doesn't know Habitat for Humanity's origin story, I think it's important because I think it tells you why we're here. So Habitat started in the 1940s on a farm in Georgia where Black and white people chose to live together in the 1940s. So think pre-civil rights era. And they did this at extreme risk. They did not coin phrases like diversity and equity and inclusion. They did those things without naming them. It was a diverse community. It was equitable. Everybody made the same amount of money working the farm, built their houses together. They ate at the same table. That's where Habitat started. So I think what is so important and what I heard you say is we would love it if people came back. We would love it if people applied to become a Habitat homeowner or bought one of the missing middle units. I think it's a real opportunity for people to get back in, because our way of doing home ownership is a $1,500 down payment, you know, is contributing toward building the house, is an affordable mortgage that allows people to gain access into home ownership. It is literally embedded in the way that we do mortgage lending and how we do our program, that people are more likely to access it that are people of color. About 40% of our home buyers are people of color. And you can just look around at Fort Collins and know that we are serving a different community of buyers. And that's incredibly important because it's not fair what's happening. It's not fair that renters have an average savings of $6,600 and that homeowners have an average savings of $260,000. Like we all know that's not equitable. So for me, that's a really important part of this project. And I don't know what to say, except we would invite people in.
One thing I would just add is that I think it's, we think an exciting part of this and why I've wanted to be involved with Habitat so long is so much of affordable housing or missing middle housing ends up being for rent. And if we're talking historical generations, but I think we can also look forward generationally as well. And how do we build that savings and that wealth building for generations that changes trajectories? And this will be 100% home ownership. We can't restrict the units from ever being sold to a non-owner, non-primary residence. But Hartford's restricting that from the first time so that this is all homeowners in the beginning. And that's the goal and intent, to try to create that generational path in the future.
To comment on that, do you want to talk about the difference between how the sale works too? I mean, as a Habitat mortgage lender, you control title.
Yeah.
If it's sold, so you ensure affordability.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. We're protecting each of our homes for 90 years to make sure that they stay affordable, and that this huge community investment that's going into it between the donors and the volunteers and everybody involved, so that it is affordable for 90 years, so that it'll serve many, many homeowners and continue that kind of paying it forward.
Right, and so Hartford can control the first purchase.
Yeah.
Habitat as the lender controls the mortgage and therefore has an ability to control deed restriction over time. And do you want to talk about term too, that 90 is a big jump?
Yeah, I guess historically, the city standard to get
Oh.
funding or support in any way is 20 years. So Habitat really is pushing that and viewing affordable housing as infrastructure in our community or infrastructure that's essential to a healthy, diverse community. And if we're making these types of investments like we make in infrastructure, we want that to be long-term. And then just for clarity's sake, the reason Hartford can't long-term restrict our units to only be primary residents is general lenders won't allow you to do that. So then we would be immediately taking off people who get a loan, and we would be looking at cash buyers, which is, doesn't serve the entire purpose that we're trying to attempt there.
And the final comment on history and landscape architecture, John, do you want to talk about incorporating that into the site and the thoughts we've had and where we are maybe in the design process too?
Yeah, no, I mean, initially we started talking about incorporating any kind of history from the site, from the neighborhood. I know Habitat has reached out to a lot of community involvement, and we're trying to incorporate that in art, in any kind of public, exposure for the project. So we welcome any comments on it or any kind of suggestions, because we're, like they've all mentioned, we're early on in the process, so.
I just had one quick follow-up, if there's been any modeling or research around like what Elevation Land Trust is doing, because I know, deed restriction is not exclusive to someone like Habitat, and I know Landon, you know that as well, but as a mortgage lender, I know that we could deed restrict this whole plot if we wanted to.
We're smiling because maybe in 2015, 16, we spent a lot of time with Elevation Community Land Trust and trying to understand how we implement that in Fort Collins. We looked at that our other project on Mulberry for a period of time, and ultimately their timelines were all far outpacing ours, like a time to market, and they were wanting to put their funds to work much quicker than we could meet and deliver those units. So that's why we moved away from that. It's probably not something we've revisited in the last 2 or 3 years, but you have a very close connection there. So.
Oh, yeah, the staff cut at Elevation came out of Habitat, so we go very far back. We're doing a very similar thing to what the Land Trust is doing. We're just doing it ourselves versus bringing in a land trust. It's more like how Habitat for Humanity in Denver does it. So we're following their model, which is accomplishing the same thing and protecting the appreciation to the buyer, but also the community infrastructure.
Thank you. Yes.
I have a question on that. Is there gonna be an HOA as part of this project? Maybe I missed that. Because I feel like there's an apartment complex in my neighborhood that basically says, as part of their HOA, you can't, more than 60% of the people can't, I feel like there's a restriction on what the HOA will allow for owners versus renters.
Oh.
I don't know if that's true. I don't think I made that up, but I feel like that's something I've seen happen because of the HOA restriction.
The HOA restricting the
percentage of renters versus owners who are occupying a building.
Yeah, and it is a very important thing to protect because lending goes away. lending options and access go away once you cross one of those thresholds. So that is why HOAs structure that, like if you're not, I think it is 60%, or maybe it's 50% owner occupied, a lot of lenders won't lend to it. So we would be looking at similar, I don't know exactly what theirs is, but similar restrictions to protect the neighborhood.
And yes, there would be a condo association or an HOA that would have the contract for landscape maintenance and snow removal in a typical multi-family development.
Yeah, so, back to the environmental part we talked about last time. I put my email down there, I haven't got any kind of soil report, anything like that. And I'm also curious how deep you dug for these, soil samples, because you say you're coming down 11 feet, but you're putting up, what, 3-story condos, you're gonna have to sub-X at least another 25 feet, so I just wanna know, and once the first scraper comes in, it takes that first tenth of topsoil off the back here, it's gonna be all in the air, so it's gonna be chronic exposure. I think we have a right to know what we're gonna be exposed to for the duration.
Yeah. So that is all stuff we have to submit to the city, and then the additional stuff above what we submit to the city, we're gonna post on a website that makes that all available so people can access it. But I think we spoke last time, we had CSU do a number of tests on this. We've had environmental engineers do complete phase 1 environmental on this, and then we've had the actual geotechnical engineers do the drillings from a structural building standpoint. So all 3 of those perspectives in on it.
And I get it, but you couldn't tell me last meeting whether it was safe in the groundwater, safe in the runoff, or safe to airborne chronic exposure. So
That's
what I'm curious about.
That's what all of those reports have studied. The environmental reports study that, and that's what they conclude, and we will make those available in public. So. And then the city of Fort Collins has a fugitive dust program, which I just love that name.
Which when you see Timberline, or when you see Vine at Timberline on a windy day, that's what we're gonna have for the duration.
Do we have
That's
access
what
to those
everybody knows.
reports? Sorry, just to follow up with the questions you asked that last time as well. Do we have copies of those environmental reports and soil tests from CSU for this on the city side?
I don't know what's been submitted yet, but we have them and are happy to share them.
Okay, yes, great. And as soon as we get those, we will send those out to you. Yes. All right, other questions? Yes.
How does the value of these homes change over time? So I know you explained like first time buyers, how that works, but it sounds like these homes might be a good like equity building, stepping stone for people, so when they move and someone else moves in, is it always gonna be at the like percentile of median income, or does that differ between Habitat and Harper?
Yeah, part of our 90-year deed restriction is gonna mean that it will allow the buyer to gain appreciation, but not the kind of outlandish appreciation that we've been seeing in our market, because it won't remain affordable after the first buyer if you don't cap it. And so in order to protect that home and keep it affordable to the next buyer and the next buyer, it's capped at a 2% appreciation per year for the buyers. And that allows them to get a little nest egg started, but allows it to serve, more people and families as well.
Another important nuance there that the board considered when we set that appreciation level is they're at a 0% currently, or a very low mortgage interest rate. So in addition to the 2% appreciation, they're paying down their rate or their mortgage and gaining equity that way faster than traditional lending.
Thank you.
All right, we do have about 10-ish minutes left. Do we have anybody we haven't gotten to tonight who has a burning question or comment?
I wanna know what they're gonna do about the parking.
What
Just,
specifically about the parking?
Like I told you the last time, I don't know if I talked to you. I got neighbors that they work on, against the traffic and whatever they wanna do. They get on top of the sidewalk, and we're talking about people that are gonna walk on the summertime and all that, very beautiful. But if we got all these people on top of the sidewalks and everything, I seen old folks trying to walk on the sidewalk, there's a big truck, a big boat on top of the sidewalk, come on, you know? And I talked to a police officer, you know what he told me? He told me, sir, we do better things like that. We take care of drugs and stuff like that. We don't give out parking tickets no more. What kind of service is that from the police? And if you're gonna get all these people in Buckingham, we need more protection from the police. Because they don't listen. I already went and talked to people, but I don't know to what people I'm gonna have to talk. So they can give me a ticket and he will never park on top of that sidewalk anymore. You know, and that's what aggravates me, you know, and that's what I don't like to come to these meetings anymore because I already have 2 heart attacks and 2 4x passes. I don't want to get another one, you know. But like I say, I mean, I talked to a police officer and I said, this is the person that's gonna help me. And that's what he told me.
Thank you so much for sharing.
You know?
Yes.
And so there's been a couple people saying that they thought the design was good, that the building's looking towards Third Street. But I don't think any of those people actually live on Third Street, but all these people do. And everybody thinks those buildings on Third Street are gonna be a nightmare. So we have to live it. So everybody can love the design and stuff, but we have to live it. And these guys have been on Third Street for, I don't know, combination of about 100 years or something. So, you know, I mean, so I think Third Street, even more than the rest of the neighborhood, has to be considered because they're the ones that are gonna take the brunt of all of this. Everybody else is just gonna deal with some overflow, but we on Third Street have to deal.
And I don't want you people to misunderstand me, you know. You people who have a tax, and people from the city, they're doing a really good job. But when it comes to the person, help and everything, you know, you have, like I say, you as a police officer, and he tell me that, come on, you know? And the same thing with the brewery over here. When they had put a fence out there, they put it, like I told you last time, they put restrooms out there and they were peeing on the other side of the restroom and my kids were watching them. Come on, give me a break. And so these days, there's no fence in there. And then they turn around and say, we got security. What security? Did they catch anybody peeing outside? They didn't have no security. Come on.
Thank you.
You know.
Yes.
I don't live on Third, so I respect your opinion about that. I do though, like, if I'm understanding it, there's only 25 spots available on Third versus 140 potential people coming into, right? Like that traffic coming in off of Fourth seems like it's gonna be significantly greater. I don't know, I guess I think it'll be interesting to see what
Well,
the
I mean,
traffic.
if you look at other neighborhoods where it's the same type of building facing the street, like I said, down here at the
Yeah.
cottage. There's a big parking lot right behind, but people prefer to park in front of their building.
Right, so
that's
you're
where
gonna have,
go first.
yes, you're gonna have 25 people parked there, it sounds like that's sort of a guarantee
On
scenario.
both sides,
Yeah,
in front of these people's houses.
right, but
And then on the other side, so.
140 other people driving into, I mean, it seems like the access points are right, maybe there should be a restriction on parking on Third, if parking's a concern. But it seems like the access point to Fourth with 140 cars coming, or whatever's gonna be that.
Can I ask a related question?
Sure.
Is Fourth Street as wide as Third Street? Or will it be?
No, it'll be wider. Yeah.
Fourth Street will be wider
Correct.
than the expanded Third Street.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, I would just add to that, I mean, we're definitely open and committed to studying what options there are on Third Street, from traffic calming with the city, that's the fancy word for speed bumps, or there are other tools in there besides speed bumps, but we're open to exploring those and helping push for those and pay for those, if there's effective tools there to do that. And so I would say definitely please continue to make suggestions. We will be asking that question and pushing to understand what's allowable. You know, the city has very specific standards, on what is allowable. On those, as you heard a little bit, truck traffic not being restricted, but the parking, you know, we do have an HOA, these will be homeowners. So the opportunity to, restrict and require and build a relationship, this isn't people turning over really frequently and re-educating. We have that long-term opportunity with homeowners to really educate well and hopefully accomplish something there that's better. So we're very open and committed to that.
There's this time. I also don't live on Third, but I've lived in this country. Well, I lived for 6 years and a half without a car. So I don't know who all is gonna move here, but I don't think each person's gonna need a new car. And most of my friends here don't have cars, and if they are like partnered, they're sharing one car. This is a very bikeable city. There's public transportation. I know there are buses here. There are buses near where I live. So I also feel like if the city commits to continue to improve public transportation, it shouldn't be a problem. I survived in Fort Collins for a year and a half without a car. And I also had very nice friends who would drive me around or let me borrow their cars. But I don't think every person ever has a car.
I saw a hand back here. Yes.
Yeah, for required permit from the city, this project requires 245 spaces. In your project, you just covered 219, and we already know that 219 are not enough. Now, if you're gonna have 140 units, I think you're very lucky if you find somebody that drives you around. The majority of people, unfortunately, we use the car. So if we want to be realistic, and we need to be realistic, almost each of those, well, you have 1 bedroom is 4, so the majority are 1 and 2 bedrooms. But most likely, if we also make a survey of how many jobs are offered in this area, the people that are going to be living here, they will still commute. Now, so the parking, again, in my opinion, is too big to be absorbed. It's just too big, because people will move in and there's 1.5 car at least per house, at least.
I think that also, like you guys designing the project, look at it with a best case scenario. And we who have to live it, look at it as a worst case scenario. So, I mean, maybe it ends up worst case scenario and you guys go, oh gosh, sorry, you guys were right, there are cars everywhere. Or you guys are right, and we go, oh, not so bad, right? But being the ones that have to live it, we have to look at it as the, worst case scenario, which is most likely what's gonna happen.
We just need to look a little bit farther in the future. That's, again, as Sarmin is going to be sustainable for the neighborhood, for pollution, for the psychology of the parking, for the psychology of people that will live there, giving them more green room. I mean, COVID showed us that people are really locked in too much. Everything negative increase, suicide, depression. So the quality of life should be considered as well. And in my public speaking, when I was talking, was not any offensive tone, was just to express in the most polite way the frustration that comes from not listening, from the experience that we have every single time when representative from the city just start the stage, on my opinion, on the wrong foot. So we are in this human life together again, and we just need to support each other. So the possibility of having and offering and building for other people, I think everybody recognizes that. And also on the paper, this thing is amazing. Is the area, I mean, affordability, reducing the traffic, all those things are good. But we need to apply to the geographic reality. That's all I'm asking you guys. Really, it's easy to draw something on a paper in your office, in an architectural place, but please apply to the reality. That's all it is.
And I think that we've all went everybody to.
Sorry guys, we are at the end of time and I wanna make sure that we get to everybody who hadn't had a chance to speak, so, hold on to that for me 1 minute. Does anybody else who has not had a chance to speak this evening have a question or comment? All right.
And I just wanna say, like, you know, we would hope that everybody would bike or ride the bus. But we have a bus station right out here that we can see. And, I mean, I don't think I've ever seen one person standing at that bus station and waiting for a bus. So people don't really ride the public transportation around here like we hoped they would. People are still getting in their cars and driving, and everybody still has a car, so I think there is a car problem.
Thank you everyone so much for tonight. I'm so sorry.
Can I just ask about process? So just to reiterate, this is gonna get voted on by city council for rezoning, correct? Correct. And then who is our city council representative and how can we reach them?
This one is Susan Gutowski.
Okay.
You can email Susan at, her last name's hard to spell, at sgutowski@fcgov.com. You can also email all council members and the mayor and the city manager at cityleaders@fcgov.com. Planning and zoning will receive copies of everything that we're hearing this evening, any emails that you want to send in to M, and if M, you want to talk about the way to get in touch with you.
Yeah, so I brought some reading material for you all. You may have received a similar document if you came last time, but this one's updated with the new project number. So you can easily find it on our website. We also had some frustration about finding things on our website, so I did include some instructions, and this is step by step. I found it pretty useful when I started at the city and was trying to find things, because our document database can be a little bit of a maze, so hopefully that's helpful for you all. It does include the YouTube video link where the video of this recording will be posted. It includes my email address, so my role is to be constantly available to answer questions and continue to take comments on this project, so you'll have that. So I definitely encourage you all to take one of these on your way out.
Did that answer all your process questions?
Yeah,
All right, great.
Real quick, can I just address the parking ratio? So the parking ratio is set by land use code. So we always have to abide by, so there's a ratio for 1 bedroom, a 2 bedroom, and a 3 bedroom. So I just wanted to clarify that, so.
Yeah, it counts 245.
Thank you all so much again for your time this evening, especially when the weather's not so great. We appreciate you coming out. We'll stick around for a few extra minutes afterwards if you have other stuff that you want to chat with us about. Otherwise, thank you. You are re-released into the wild.
And I'm still not getting the letters. I haven't gotten any letters.